Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Easy Climb Tech YouTube channel. Today we have sort of a fun, sort of lighthearted video for you guys. We're going to be doing a tier list, stack ranking the overall usefulness of each database in a system design interview. So we have plenty of mentors at Easy Climb Tech who have been giving system design interviews for years. And what they'll all tell you is that when the interviewer asks you, what database are you using for this application, man? You be able to give not only an answer, but articulate why you're choosing that database instead of another one. So it's actually not a good strategy to just say, well, they use this database over at Google, so I'm going to use it for this app. Bad strategy, actually. We want to be able to give an intelligent answer to these questions. So today we're going to be taking a closer look at each of these databases as well as giving them a general ranking in our tier list. So with all that being said, let's jump right into the video. So let's kick things off here with MySQL. This is one that most of you, I'm assuming, are already pretty familiar with. It's almost never a bad choice to use in a system design interview. I would say be careful about using MySQL when the application demands a high level of scalability or a high number of transactions per second. It is possible to make MySQL work with this type of application. We can look at an application like YouTube. YouTube actually still to this day uses MySQL. But in order to accommodate billions of users, they had to create their own framework. It's a framework called Vitess. This allowed them to simplify the sharding involved with MySQL and ultimately allowed them to scale to billions of users. But I would say use MySQL as your database in a system design interview when your data is highly relational and the schema is static and well-defined. MySQL is strongly consistent, it's ACID compliant, and it is a relational database. So it has a lot of use cases. Overall, I'm going to put MySQL in the B tier. It is a proven technology with great use cases, with just that one downside of being the difficulty involved with scalability. So B tier for MySQL. The next database we're going to look at here is Cockroach DB. So Cockroach DB is a cloud-native distributed SQL database which sort of lives up to its name because it's highly fault-tolerant and almost impossible to kill. It offers strong consistency, horizontal scalability, and global data distribution with minimal effort. So you can use CRDB for almost any application in a system design interview. The only time CRDB is not great is when you are on a tight budget. CRDB is quite expensive, or when you have an unusual need for complex joins. Other than that, Cockroach definitely belongs in the S tier. If you aren't familiar with Cockroach DB, I would highly recommend reading more about it for your future system design interviews. But this one's going in the S tier for me. All right, now let's take a look at Cassandra DB. Cassandra is a highly scalable and distributed NoSQL database designed to handle large amounts of data across many servers with no single point of failure. It uses a peer-to-peer architecture and has flexible schema to provide high availability and fault tolerance. All this makes it sort of ideal for write-heavy and real-time applications. Cassandra's data model is based on a column family structure, which allows efficient querying and flexibility in storing structured, semi-structured, or unstructured data. If you're unfamiliar, I would say, with the column family structure versus row structure, I would say do some reading on that before throwing Cassandra around in a system design interview. I would say use it in your system design interview when you need high throughput and low latency reads and writes, and when you think your app will benefit from column-based access patterns. I would say also you should become familiar with Cassandra DB before throwing it around in a system design interview. An interviewer who is familiar with this database could make you look silly if your only justification for using it is that Google uses it. Overall, I would put it in the A tier. So A tier for Cassandra DB. All right, real quickly, we're going to take a look at Snowflake. So Snowflake is a great choice for offline or analytics processing of your data. It is extremely useful in a real company setup, but not as useful for system design interviews. If you have a meta product design interview, it is worth mentioning that Snowflake can be used for analytics. So if you want to name drop Snowflake for your analytics side of some sort of product design architecture, could do that. It does use SQL to query the data and has multiple layers of optimization to achieve higher performance. Overall, I would say it's useful in certain niche use cases, so I'm going to put it in the C tier. All right, so now we're going to take a look at Dynam DB. So Dynam DB is a fully managed NoSQL database service by AWS. It's designed for ultra-fast performance at scale. It uses a key value and document data model which supports single-digit millisecond latency. So DynamoDB is perfect for applications requiring high throughput or low latency. This could include things like gaming, like a gaming application. DynamoDB would be great. It has features like on-demand scaling, global tables, and built-in caching. DynamoDB lets you focus on building applications without worrying about database operations. It is a great database to use to achieve low latency reads. There is actually even a strongly consistent mode that ensures that a read operation always returns the most up-to-date data, reflecting all writes that were successfully completed prior to the read. So I would say it's great for low latency applications, and because of that, I'm going to put DynamoDB in the A tier. I think this has a lot of different use cases, especially in system design interviews. A lot of the time, one of the non-functional requirements is going to be low latency. So DynamoDB is a great choice for applications like that. So A tier for DynamoDB. All right, now we're going to take a look at some of these meme databases like Google Sheets. So Google Sheets is not a real database, but it is a great choice if you are levels.fyi and want to make a cool hipster blog post about how quirky your app is. For those that don't know, levels.fyi does use Google Sheets to store their salary data. I assume they just use Google's API to fetch and store that data. But unless you want to really explain in detail how this is done, I would say avoid using Google Sheets in your system design interview. So let's look briefly at Postgres. Postgres is basically the same as MySQL. It has a lot of the same drawbacks and a lot of the same upsides, but I do like the elephant slightly more than I like the dolphin. Elephants are pretty badass, so I'm going to put this right up next to MySQL, but just slightly ahead of it. So Postgres finds itself in the B tier as well. Right, so our next meme database here is Nosql. And the reason I threw this one on here is because I hear from a lot of our mentors, a lot of our system design mentors, that people show up to system design interviews and they say, I'm going to use a Nosql database, without actually understanding that Nosql is a family of databases. So if you don't know a single Nosql database in that Nosql family, I would suggest that you learn one. The next one that we're going to talk about is MongoDB, which is probably the most popular NoSQL database. So rather than saying I'm going to use NoSQL as my database, I would suggest that you actually learn one of the databases. So this one's going to find itself in the non-existing tier because this is not a real database. It is a family of databases. MongoDB, let's talk about it a little bit. So MongoDB is a popular NoSQL database that stores data in a flexible JSON-like format, allowing dynamic schema design and easy integration with modern applications. It's highly scalable and supports horizontal sharding. It also offers built-in replication for high availability, making it a go-to choice for web and mobile apps. So MongoDB does shine in handling unstructured data and rapid prototyping, but it has some drawbacks. For example, if you like MongoDB, you're probably bragging about how you don't need schemas, but then you might spend hours debugging why your app crashes when it expects price to be a number and then gets a string. So if you really need to have a flexible schema and you'd like to store and search it quickly without Elasticsearch, MongoDB might be a good choice for you. Overall, I'm going to put it in the B tier because I think that there are better options, and I think using something like CRDB is usually a better choice. But yeah, overall MongoDB is going to find itself in the B tier. Now what about Amazon Document DB? I would say overall just use MongoDB. These two databases are essentially accomplishing the same thing, but MongoDB just does it better. So we're going to throw Amazon Document DB in the D tier, and I'm going to advise you guys just use MongoDB. Finally, we have Timescale DB. So Timescale DB, if anyone out there has heard of this, it's a powerful time series database built on PostgreSQL, and it's optimized for efficient storage and querying of time-stamped data. Its features like automatic partitioning and SQL compatibility make it ideal for use cases such as monitoring analytics. So it can be used in some of your analytics use cases. You rarely need something like this for a system design interview, and therefore I think it belongs in probably the C tier. So Timescale DB is going to find itself in the C tier, and that concludes our list. Alrighty, so that's going to do it for today's tier list stack ranking databases video. Thanks everyone who stuck around and watched to the end. If you guys enjoyed this content, drop a like, subscribe. Also join the Discord channel. It's free, and we have a ton of professionals in there answering questions about the FANG interview process. If you have an interview coming up yourself, I would highly recommend checking out easyclimb.tech. We have a ton of mentors who are super professional and super talented, who have already helped hundreds of students land their, frankly, their dream jobs at FANG companies. And these guys are really the best in the business over at easyclimb.tech. So head over there, check it out. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.